Welcome to The Alignment Show, featuring conversations with folks who have taken steps to identify their highest values and align their lives around them. Time on this earth is not unlimited, and you may be seeking to make sure you spend your time on things that matter to you. These conversations will encourage you and support you in doing so. Now, let's meet this week's guest on The Alignment Show. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be in the world. Welcome once again to The Alignment Show. I'm Don King, your host, and it's my privilege to meet with you pretty much every week. You know, we had planned to just do maybe a couple of times a month because of things going on in my life. I know your life is busy too, but I've had so many good guests lately. We've been managing to get on just about every week, although it's different days, different times that we put the episode up. You're able to join us live. Great. I see that we do have some folks online with us. And so we'll keep an eye on the chat, share comments and that sort of thing. Let's see. Dennis is on with us, our guest for today, and then one of his friends, I think. So we'll be watching for those comments during the broadcast. By the way, if you watch this on replay, you can still make comments on the various outlets where we have the podcast posted. So we would be glad for folks to be able to see those and interact. We really are a community, not just a podcast. So as we're getting started here today, I want to remind you of our sponsors. One of our sponsors is SalesWise Live. I think just about every quarter they are doing something, and I'm looking over here to make sure that I've got that up there. Let's see. Let's do the QR code on that. Yeah, there we are. SalesWise Live. I've had all three of them on the show here before. That is Bob Berg and Jeff West, Kim Angeli. All of them impress me with their ability to forge relationships. This is non-manipulative sales. If you have a stereotypical view of selling, then this is a different way to do it, a more effective way to do it, a more lucrative way to do it. Their next iteration of SalesWise Live is going to be 3.5 days in Florida in April 2nd through 4th, I believe. And those of you who are on here with us audio only, you can always get to them by going to donking.com. That's DONNKING.com/SalesWise to learn more about it. There will be no pushiness, so you can go check that out, see how that might fit into what you're doing in your life and make a difference in the lives of others. Also, sponsoring the show is me, or technically my books. So you can find out about those books at donking.com/books. I've got, I think it's 4 of them out now. I've got 3 more that are in process. A couple of them are business parables, and those are the ones that I think are probably most accessible. Really find folks that enjoy the Sparklight Chronicles. They will help you in identifying your values, living your values so you can value your life. And that's what we're all about here on the Alignment Show. There's also a couple of more specialized books there. Again, no pushiness. I would encourage you to go check them out. There's even a free short story there, a couple of free short stories, actually. And so I'll be glad to share those with you. As always, we're seeking to just make a difference for folks. So we do have some folks on here with us. I see Jay from Springfield, Missouri on here with us. Glad to have you here. And says he's looking forward to hearing from Dennis. Dennis, I'll be introducing in just a moment. In fact, Dennis is on here with us. Yeah, grateful to be here. We're grateful to have you here, Dennis. And let's see, there's a little bit of conversation in the background, which we won't put all of them up on the screen, but we're really glad to have you all watching. So let me go ahead and get Dennis on stage for us here. Now, as I say in the introduction, I've been getting to know Dennis a little bit more. I met him a few months ago now at this point, because we recorded this episode, I don't know, 2, 3 months back. So it was still kind of new as I was getting to know him, and I've had more interactions with him since. He spent 23 years in the Air Force, and while in the Air Force, he began pursuing effective leadership, having a significant impact in senior consultant roles. You may not think of a consultant internally in the Air Force, but that's exactly what it was. And from that, when he retired, he could have just sat back and enjoyed retirement, but rather he decided to enjoy pursuing his passion for coaching and leadership development. So a couple of things that I can tell you real quickly about him. He became a certified member of the Maxwell Leadership Team, and not just certified by Maxwell, but as part of their leadership team. And he now also works as a faculty coach at the University of Denver. So he is not just sitting back. We're going to learn more about him as we go through the interview. So without any further messing about, let's go ahead and bring on Dennis LaRue. I'll turn it over to my recorded self. And thank you, Don, talking to myself there. Appreciate that introduction for Dennis as we're getting to know him. I'm getting to know Dennis. I just met him recently through the Bob Berg group that we talk about on here a lot of times. And I just knew we needed to have a conversation because Dennis had a long career in the military. Going to ask him a little bit about that in a moment. But, well, and let me go ahead and ask a question here, Dennis. It just occurs to me off the top of my head. You were in the military long enough to take full retirement, I think. Am I right about that?
That's correct, Don. I was in the Air Force for 23 years, 1 month, and 29 days. And for all my veterans out there and retirees that are watching this, you know what that number means. We've got it down to the day.
Yeah, to the hour almost.
Almost.
And I've always had a great appreciation for the service. It may be cliche, but I mean it. Thank you for your service. I am not a veteran. My dad was a POW in World War II, member of the 82nd Airborne Division.
Wow.
And when Korea came along, he tried to re-enlist, and they wouldn't let him. He was old enough, they wouldn't let him. But I came up during the Vietnam era, and he was determined that I not go in the military because of the nature of Vietnam. But because of growing up with him, I've always had that great appreciation. I'm an outsider, but I have the appreciation for your community. And so I did want to, though, verify with the full retirement, because with full retirement, I mean, you could have just said, okay, I'm going to travel. I'm going to, I don't know, whatever you do for fun. But that's not what you did. You learned some stuff in the military that you are now wanting to share with the larger culture, I guess we could say. You can see folks, though, that are on with us on video. You can see on his name tag, his company is LDR, that is Leaders Develop Relationships. And so this is not just about leadership. It's about an approach to leadership. You could have just sat back and said, I'm going to take it easy, but you're out there making a difference to people. What is it that has led you to develop this business now that is, shall we say, not military? I know adjusting to the non-military life can be a challenge in and of itself.
Yeah, that's a great question, Don. I do know some that when they retire, they travel the world. That wasn't me. Taking a month off in my military career, I'm bored in 2 weeks. Wow. I'm ready to get back to work. There's just it's purposeful for me, and the reason I'm in the leadership and developing relationships business now is I had the privilege of being in the best Air Force in the world, and they poured into me and invested in my growth and my development. And I just assumed, being a part of the military, that this was going on, what we say, outside the fence, outside the wire. And what I'm learning is that's not happening as often as I thought. And so I want to be a part of developing those leaders that actually develop relationships with their people, not just boss them around.
Okay. Okay. Now that makes a lot of sense. For those of us outside the military, I think we might view the military as being built on a top-down, do what you're told, follow the orders kind of thing.
Sure.
What you're talking about sounds very different. So, how did that come about, the emphasis on the relationship aspect?
Well, the bossing around, the military is definitely a rank heavy structure. I mean, I learned a lesson. I learned that lesson when I first got in. I'll never forget this. I'm the type of person that when I'm asked to do something, if I ask you a question about it, I'm not challenging your authority. I'm not complaining. I want to learn what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, to apply it to the understanding the whole of what I'm doing. So my first supervisor, he asked me to do something. And I remember saying, Sergeant so-and-so, why am I doing this? And he knew my thought process. And he said to me, Air Force Reg 3-2 says you have to do this. And I'm thinking to myself, I love reading and I love learning. Wow, there's a regulation that covers this. Can't wait. Air Force 3-2. When I get back from doing this, I'm going to go look that up. And he just, he shakes his head and he goes, Dennis. He goes, Air Force Reg 3-2 is, and he points to his shoulder. He goes, I got 3 stripes and you've got 2. And I go, okay, I got it. Yeah. Basically said, you're doing it because I'm telling you to do it. Thankfully, he wasn't that way too long after that. But the whole rank heavy is if I tell you to do it, go do it. And you go do it. You follow orders. I mean, we're in the military. There are times when there's not a time to question orders. You just go do it.
Well, sure. I mean, under pressure, certainly in a battle situation.
Exactly.
I can understand the need to build that mentality. It's almost like martial arts. You practice it so that when it's under pressure, it's automatic.
Right. Muscle memory. Yep.
Still, with that, is there an awareness that you're more likely to get compliance if people understand the why? Let me put a context here. I think you and I have known each other long enough to know one of my big things is that questioning is not doubting; it's inquiring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I'm not arguing. I just want to understand, because if I understand, I can probably do a better job of it. And yet, there's also, again, as an outsider, I may not know at all what I'm talking about here. Of necessity, there are a lot of things in the military where it's on a need-to-know basis. And so as you're coming out of the military, how hard is it to wrap your head around that different way of thinking about questioning is just inquiry? Let's probe, let's understand, especially as you now work with leaders in a non-military setting. Do you find that there's a challenge in getting people to inquire?
That's a good question. It depends on the leader. I mean, my natural background was asking those kind of questions. So coming from my viewpoint, I don't see the problem with it, because I love engaging, having those conversations, connecting, and creating that safe space for them to ask the questions without fear of being judged or they're dumb, or the things that roll through our minds for fear of asking questions. And we think about it, maybe the younger generation coming up, I'm experiencing where they're afraid to ask questions because they fear that they're going to be judged, they're going to get fired, and everybody's not going to know that they don't know everything because they come across as they know everything. Well, we were all young once. We all felt the same way. I remember being a teenager thinking I knew everything. I was the smartest person around. And well, that didn't take long to figure out. I wasn't, and I'm still not. So for me, one of my skill sets is being able to just have conversations like this and connect and allow people that be able to just take off the mask and say, okay, it's okay to ask the question. It's okay. What are you working through? What are you struggling with? How can I help you get better? It's not about me, it's about you.
Mm-hmm.
What is it you need? Who do I need to connect you with? Is there something, if you didn't learn something and you think you learned it, let's sit down and go through the process. There was an individual I worked with in my military career that really struggled with picking up some of the database and things that I was working on. And I was given the charge to train this person. And this person, basically their level of computer competency was email and searching the internet.
Wow.
And for 2 years, I trained this person how to navigate a database, use a spreadsheet, how to analyze what they were looking at within the database. It wasn't just numbers and letters, but what did it mean?
Mm-hmm.
And for 2 years, we went through this process, and eventually they got it, and they could do it. And so for me, coming to the outside and having to deal with that, it comes down to believing in the person. Leaders, if you really believe in your people and you really want them trained and you really want to reduce high turnover and people leaving your organization, putting in the patience and time up front to make sure your people are properly trained and you know them, saves on the back end.
That makes a lot of sense. Part of what I'm hearing here is establishing an atmosphere of trust enough where the person is willing to admit, here's something that I don't know.
Yes.
Is there obviously there would be a different issue involved, but how do you tackle it when you're dealing with somebody who doesn't know what they don't know? I mean, we've already talked about this a little bit. There are the people who they don't know, but they're afraid of being judged, and so they keep quiet.
Right.
And then there is the, and I know we're being stereotypical with ages here, but it does seem to happen when we're younger that we think we know a lot more than we do. So that's somebody who doesn't know that they don't know something, and they need to have their eyes opened before they can even learn. So what would be different about somebody who doesn't know what they don't know and the leader is in that position?
That's a great question. The person doesn't know what they don't know. For a person in that position, regardless of level, there's a lot of people that don't know what they don't know. They're called blind spots. Everybody else sees them. They don't.
Right.
So it's being able to sit down with that person and express to them, hey, I'm not sure you're aware of this, but this is what I've observed. Have you heard this from anybody else? Well, I have. Who have you heard it from? Well, I've heard it from this person. But creating that space where they can have that conversation. And I think that starts with when either the leader shows up for the first time or they're the new employee in the onboarding process and getting to establish that relationship up front. In the military, it worked like this. Either you showed up to the base as the leader and that's your team, or you showed up to the base, that's your leader, and you've got to make it work. There's no such thing as, okay, I'm just going to let high turnover and get somebody else in. I mean, that's your team. Yeah. That you're either the leader or that's your team, and you have to make it work or else. And I think that mentality should be brought into. I think that's a mentality that could really add value to organizations, because for me, I can't understand it. You actually get to pick the people and the leaders on your team. And if it fails, well, whose fault is it?
Yeah.
And, we were talking about that squirrel a minute ago. He's looking at me right now again. He showed up.
Is he up there again? So, folks, for those who wonder what's going on. And if our friend Jeff West is watching this, Jeff, this squirrel is for you. Dennis has a squirrel outside feeder, and he's hit the window a few times. So now the squirrel is popping up to check if you're still there. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, this time he did. He looked over. When he saw me move my head, he just jumped down. He knows I'm here. Speaking of chasing squirrels.
Yeah.
Oh,
there's a certain satisfaction in that, I think.
There is. And the reason the bird feeder's there is cardinals. There's just something about seeing a bright red cardinal that it's one of those touches that it helps me reset and refresh and change my mindset for a moment.
Mm.
And my wife recognized that, and for my birthday, she got me that. I just put it out, and they're now starting to show up. So it's just one of those things for me that if I were sharing with my team, like I'm sharing with you right now, that's one of those things as a leader I take a mental note of, because when I engage and want to connect with somebody, with that person, I'll say, hey, I noticed you mentioned that you really like cardinals and birds. Tell me a little bit more about that. How are you getting more cardinals in the, tell me a little bit more about that story, because that fascinates me and I like them too. Now we got a connection point. Now there's a way to connect with somebody and make them feel a part of the team and welcome, and that I'm hearing them and I'm listening to them and I value what they value, and makes it easier for them to have the conversation. And he just popped up again. There he is looking.
There he is.
There he goes.
There he goes. Okay. So just from a real practical standpoint, there's nothing fluffy about finding out somebody has a new bird feeder, that they like squirrels or whatever. I mean,
No.
one of our sayings around the alignment show is connection before content. It's not that the content doesn't matter. It's that without the connection, the content won't matter.
Right. And I've heard John Maxwell say it this way. He's one of the, he's had the most significant influence in my life outside of my parents and my faith. And he says this all the time. He says it all the time. It's, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah. I think most of us have heard that, maybe to the point of it becoming a cliche. So it's worthwhile taking a step back and saying, okay, how do you do that? And you're demonstrating at least one of those ways. You make a connection on a personal level. It's not, I don't know another way to say it. It's not fluff. There are some people who think if it's not immediately directed to the bottom line or whatever, then it's a waste of time. It's not a waste of time. It's the primary thing, really, because it helps to establish the trust that lets the other things happen.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about that trust thing again, as an outsider, but having a great appreciation for the military and how the culture develops.
He almost got in there that time. I'll figure him out later. I'll get him later.
When you are in a life or death situation, a battle situation, I mean, you have to have immediate trust of the people around you, whether you like them or not. You have to trust that they have your back, you have theirs. How do you take that insight over into a business setting where and I've got two questions that are competing together in my head at the same time. Maybe we can combine them here.
Okay.
Do you see a difference generationally in this thing about establishing trust? I think a lot of the younger folks, and again, I don't mean this to be ageism, but a lot of them have done a lot more of their interactions online as opposed to in person. And so it may not be that they haven't learned how to establish trust in person, but they've learned different ways of establishing trust.
Yeah, I think what you said there at the end is spot on. They've learned different ways for trust. Trust, there's so much when you're dealing, that subject is so broad. I value the one-on-one, or like we're doing right now because of Corona, COVID. We're now doing a lot more of what you and I are doing with employees. There's a lot of people still working from home. I mean, I also am an adjunct faculty coach at a university. So most of the people that I interact with are right here, and building trust that way is a new way of building trust, because you and I growing up, we built our trust this way, watching TV, watching the news, media and things like that, listening to our families. And I feel like these days, most people are outside of social media and their interactions are so different, but they're building trust from viral videos and the influencers in that format help build trust with them. And I think in the workplace, I think there's almost a natural distrust with people coming into the workplace, because maybe the younger generation heard us complaining about our work when we came home, and they're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to a place that I don't want to be at for 10, 15, 20, 30 years and come home every day not liking what I'm doing. I don't want that kind of a life. And so maybe some of that distrust is from there. I mean, your dad, I love the example that your dad said for you. It's like, hey, he was POW and 82nd Airborne. I mean, in my book, that's a hero.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that would be somebody I would want to spend time with and just say thanks and appreciate and learn lessons from. That's powerful.
Absolutely. It also makes me think about, in the context of what we're talking about right here, his generation, it was fairly typical that you wound up with an employer, and it was truly a lifelong relationship. And we hear a lot these days about how the average job only lasts about 4 years. Employees do not have loyalty to the employer. And to be fair, the employer doesn't have loyalty to the employee.
That's facts right there.
Lay people off just so easily. And so that does not lend itself towards developing that long-term relationship or the trust. So we have to develop what we're going to develop faster, and yet also be able to, when it's time to move on, you still want to maintain good relationships, because there's going to be those recommendations and all those things that would follow you.
Yeah.
So how does trust evolve in that setting?
That's
too big a question.
No, that's a great question, because it reminds me of my military career. I moved every 3-4 years. I think I stayed at one place 5 years. And I came into the Air Force married and a baby on the way. My daughter was on the way. I've got 3 kids, all born in the military. So with that kind of moving, you didn't have 3, 5, 10 years to get adjusted to a city or a town and people. It was show up, unpack, get everything in place within 2 weeks, start work, and then start finding those places and start building relationships right away, because time was of the essence. And that's your support. The base was your support. The people around you were the support, especially overseas. And I think you can have that same mindset in a workplace. And it's a new employee, onboard them, make them a part of the team. Don't just stick them in a full day training. Give your organizational brief, org chart, see the store manager or the CEO, and the next day, hey, welcome, get to work. What are they working towards? Who are they working for? What's besides metrics, what else is there? Introduce them to the people on your team. That's one thing we did in the military, at least for me in the Air Force. We got a new person. Not only did they do the welcome to the base stuff, but then when they came to the organization, I took them around and introduced them to every member of the team, build relationships, take them out for a coffee, get to know them personally, take them to the significant people in the organization, let them meet the commanders, let them meet the senior leaders of the organization, and let them have some time with them. So they felt like they were a part of a team, not just, this is just a job.
And they're not just a new guy. I mean, just for real quickly, they're integrated.
Exactly. They're a part of the team. They're an important and valued member of the team, and we can't wait to see what they bring, their skill sets, their strengths, who they are to the table, to get to know them, because I want to plug them in on the right place on the team. I don't want to put where they're strong, where actually they're weak. I'll make sure that they're plugged in and a contributing member and feeling like what they do matters. And I think that's something that's missing today too, is we're not getting to know our people, and we're not letting them know that they matter, what they do matters, and we want to put them in a place to succeed. And if they're only going to be here for a couple of years, I mean, not many people retire from the military. If you're only going to do your 4 years, I want to help you. My mindset is this: I want to get 4 years out of you. But at the same time, if this is all you're going to be doing for 4 years, how can I set you up for success for where you really want to go?
Okay.
Who can I
Okay.
connect with you? What experiences can I give you? Is there something that I can do now to help you get better prepared for when you walk out? Because I want to make sure you transition. I don't want to just kick you to the curb and say, "Hey, thanks for your service. Now gone." There's a lot of veterans that feel like that.
Yeah.
And I can tell you right now, with all the high turnover that companies have this day, that's exactly how the employees are feeling. I'm just a number. And that's how we don't want to feel in the military. Or we're not a number, we matter, and we're looking for a new mission.
Mm.
It's hard to transition out of the military because your mission is so big and so important. We struggle. When I say we, I think this from a veteran's perspective, the mission is so big and so broad, and I transition out. What do I transition into that's as big?
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes me think too, because I was going to ask about the one who's in there just for one tour duty.
Mm-hmm.
They've still got to do that acclimating and that sort of thing. You were talking about what leadership could do. Do you develop that skill as, and I don't know what the proper term is, the person who, in a way, everybody's a leader, of course, but
Sure.
somebody who's not an official leader, they come into a new place, whether we're talking about a new base or we're talking about a new company, um, stopping in mid-sentence in order to give a quick little context. People will sometimes ask me as a teacher of communication, is the responsibility for effective communication more on the speaker or on the audience member? And some people would say it's 50-50. Some would say 80-20, just depending on where you are in the process. My contention is it's 100-100. You take full responsibility wherever you are. So
Mm-hmm.
if you are the new person coming in and leadership doesn't take you around like that, you can just sit back and say, well, I'm just a number. Or you can take some leadership of your own and go around and introduce yourself, meet people. Is that part of the military culture because everybody's moving so often? The
Yes,
question
I
makes
hear
sense.
it does. And and the way that we would express that in the military, and I express it now, is leaders initiate. Leaders
Mm,
initiate. Leaders take the initiative.
there you
In sports, it's the next man up mentality. If
go.
the
Mm,
quarterback gets hurt, backup QB, you better be ready to go. And study your playbook. And what happens is it's the same in the military. It's just you initiate. If
mm,
the leader isn't going to initiate with you who has the title, well, you know what? Then you initiate. Then you demonstrate leadership by initiating. If you're not getting the feedback that you're looking for, initiate the feedback. If you're not being promoted, and go on a fact-finding mission and find out why. Find out the information. What are they seeing? What assumptions are you making? I think that's a big one there in companies is people say, I want to get promoted, but I don't feel like that my leadership's seeing me. Well, leadership is waiting for you to initiate the conversation because they don't want to assume promoting you into a position you don't want to be in.
indeed.
And
Indeed.
so you got I'm going to wait here. I'm going to wait here. And we wonder, we got to close the gap. Somebody's got to initiate. So, like you said, I like the 100%, 100%. The audience is 100% invested in what am I here for? What am I listening for? What am I looking out for? And the speaker on the other side is, okay, they're here. I want to make sure I serve them. I want to make sure I meet their needs. I want to make sure that I'm understanding the size of my audience, whether it's one or thousands. They're here for a reason, and I need to make sure I do my due diligence to close that gap of them sitting there trying to figure things out or zoning out. I want to make sure that I'm touching as many people as possible to give them what they need when they need it.
Exactly. Exactly. Focus on what you can control. You just can't control what the other people do.
Exactly. Control the controllables. That's so good. Exactly.
There we are. Well, we are starting to run out of time, Dennis. I want to make sure people know how to get in touch with you. And again, those of you who are with us on the screen, we had a tag going that had Dennis's website in it. And we're even going to show a QR code. So if you've got a screen available, you can shoot this real easily. So here is the QR code for Dennis's website, which is enrichedleaders.com. Enriched maxwellleaders.com, all one word.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also good to connect with Dennis on LinkedIn. He's got a good newsletter that he publishes there. So there's the QR code on the screen for that. And if you are on with us audio, you can find Dennis on LinkedIn by looking for Dennis LaRue. That's LARUE.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think too many of those come up when you search for that, but you can always go to our show notes at confidencecultivators.com. And we're going to have links to all of this in the show notes. So any advice on finding the right Dennis LaRue, Dennis, on LinkedIn?
Yes, there is one Dennis LaRue that usually pops up ahead of me, and he is a retired National Hockey League referee. That's not me.
That's not him.
If you type in Dennis LaRue Jr., you will definitely get me. I pop up every time with the Junior. I'm named after my dad. Also, thanks for pointing out the newsletter. It's called #SteelToesRequired. You could probably find me that way as well on LinkedIn if you're missing it. I enjoy writing. It comes out every week. As a matter of fact, I'll be putting out a new one today, today is the 10th of October. When this show goes out, you'll see all of the previous editions at that time. I'd love for you to read, interact. I respond to every comment, so I'd love your comments, share. I appreciate that. Thanks, Don.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on, Dennis. This is going to make a difference in our listeners' lives. And we'll have myself, separate recording, I guess. I'm still getting used to having this multiple personality thing, but I'm gonna turn it over to myself now to close out the show. But once again, thank you for being on with us here today on the Alignment Show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Don.
Oh, it was great having Dennis on. In fact, he's been on. For those of you who've been on with video, I guess this is one of the real advantages of following one of the video channels, because we've had all kinds of chat today, and we've been putting those on the screen. So Dennis is with us through the chats. Looks like another one's come in here, as a matter of fact. Okay, we've got some comments here. So Dennis says, I was not in the NHL. And I can tell you that we're going to get Dennis on here, actually. So he's going to be able to join us. Dennis, I'm about to turn your camera on here.
Hey, Don. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah, it's been a few months now. I didn't realize how long ago it was that we recorded this, but great conversation, and there's been a lot of interaction online. So folks, you can go to the show notes, confidencecultivators.com, and find links to the videos if you'd like to see the video version. And let's see, there was something else that I wanted to say when we got you on here. You're at issue, I think you just put out issue number 28 of Steel Toes Required. Am I remembering that right? Or?
Yes, sir. I just put one out yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Excellent. Because the news is getting close to 30. So, that's the average newsletter only lasts about 8 issues. So you're really ahead on that one.
Outstanding. So that's good news. I don't want to be average.
Oh, my goodness. So, and I'm going to put another comment up here from Eric Reed here. Steel Toes Required is really 2 decades old. Yeah. So good it should be a book. And I bet, fairly easy to turn blog posts or newsletters with accumulation into a book. So I'll bet that could be coming in the future.
It could be. And Chuck Ham thank you, Eric, for pointing out what Chuck Ham said. Chuck Ham and I served together. We've known each other for 20 years and worked side by side for 5 of them. Many coffees and things like that. And I remember just starting I think he was probably the first person I shared #SteelToesRequired with. So, and I just started putting it out there on Facebook. And when the hashtags was becoming a big thing, that was one that's always stuck with me. And I love it. Oh, thanks, Carrie. Appreciate that. I got at least 3 people that are going to buy the book now when I do it.
And for folks who are on with us audio only, Carrie commented, "I agree, it should be a book." So yeah, wanted to have that out there. Well, Dennis,
Thank
we're in
you.
an unusual situation. You probably know because I know you listen to the podcast a lot. You know that one of my favorite closing questions, which I don't think I asked you in our interview,
Mm.
was to say that there's usually something that you wish that I had asked that I didn't. What would that question be, and what would your answer to it be? Now, since we recorded this thing back in October, you have had months to think about, oh gosh, I wish Don had asked XYZ, whatever it is. Did anything come to mind that you would like to add at this point?
Wow, that's a great question. And I'm going to steal that question. I think that's a great
Yeah.
question. Um, you covered military and leadership and coaching. Um, maybe a question like, I think a question is the difference between coaching and consulting, because that
Ah,
comes up a lot. That's a question I don't think is answered enough in this industry because, well, I was a consultant in my Air Force career, and now I'm a coach. Well, what's the difference between the two?
yeah.
So the difference between the two in a nutshell is this: the consultant solves problems. The consultant identifies a problem, solves a problem, presents solutions to the problem, and then leaves it to the person they're solving the problem for to either make a decision and solve the problem or not. I saw that many times in my career. You present solutions, and sometimes they like the solutions, and there were other times you didn't give them the answer they were really looking for, and so they said nothing. So it felt like you wasted a lot of time. On
Yeah.
the other side, coaching is this: I don't solve your problem. I don't give advice. You've got the answer within you. I come alongside of you and help you discover the answer you already know. You just need the belief in the answer and then to act on that answer. So I go more of an accountability partner, a sounding board, asking good questions, building that relationship and spending time with that person to give them the safe space to work through what they need to work through and get what they need when they need it, and to launch and move forward to
Hmm.
get to where they want to go. So
And
I think that's the biggest difference between the two. One solves problems and the other one comes alongside of the person so they can solve their own because they already know the answer.
now, in practice, do you wind up kind of a blend of those things, at least with some clients?
Sure, that happens. I mean, sometimes there'll be a moment where I'll say, "Hey, I'll take off. Can I take off my coach hat and put on my consultant hat for a moment and share this with you, not to push you into my direction, but to add a little bit more context to where you're at."
Okay. Maybe plant a seed and then see what comes up in the client, so to speak.
Sure. I
Okay.
don't want to direct them into my answer, but maybe what they need is a different perspective to help them with their answer.
Yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Somebody here, James, has commented coaching, consulting, and counseling all have their places, sometimes interactive, but they are distinct. So
Yes.
yes, a good observation. So for the coach slash consultant and for the client to kind of have that difference in mind, it brings to my mind a follow up question. We talked in the interview some about people, um, and a little bit of ageism, I guess, but it's something that we have actually observed that a lot of students will have fear about asking the question, even older folks,
Mm.
fear of looking stupid or whatever. There's something a little different there, which is I would tend to call it just a sheer lack of curiosity. And
Mhm.
I think humans, by their nature, love learning. So my observation is that when people get to, from my experience, college age, and that tends to be the same age as people coming into the military, that they've had the love of learning almost beaten out of them. They've been trained not to be curious. So, do you find yourself in training leadership, helping people learn how to reawaken natural curiosity? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It does make sense. We've read all of the stats that are out there about most people never pick up another book once they get out of high school. Well, They're probably not even, now we got audiobooks and everything else, but still doesn't matter. They're not listening to them. They're not reading them. And they don't enjoy the learning process anymore. They got the paper, college. Hey, I just want to get the paper. I want to click the checklist and get the paper. And then that paper says I've learned it all. But what we find out is no, the paper just is kind of like the lowest level of leadership, Air Force Reg 3-2.
Yeah.
Welcome to the room. Welcome to the room. What are you going to do now to stay in the room besides saying, I got the paper, or I got the stripes, I got the bars, I got the stars, or I got the CEO title, whatever. What are you going to do to enhance the rest of the people in the room and enhance yourself? And the best thing to do is to acknowledge you're not the smartest person in the room. And so when you do that, it helps you grow, but you've got to have a lifelong learning mindset in order to do it, rather than I'm going to project an image that I don't have. And everybody sees it. It's a blind spot to you. Actually, it's not a blind spot because you're projecting it. You know it. They know it too. So it's okay. If you want to learn, the people are there to help you learn and grow, but you've got to have the mindset and the humility to grow.
Yeah. And you sometimes just have to reawaken that first. There's as we talked about, there's the thinking, you know, everything, but then there is I don't care. I don't want to know anymore. You know, and that's a whole different issue. So real quick, the LDR, you know, leaders develop relationships. It seemed like to me there was some discussion that LDR had some other significance to you, initials for your name or something.
Yeah, Chuck Ham knows this one for sure. We had on our Air Force annual appraisals 13 lines to capture 365 days of work that we did in our career. And we had to capture the best ones and cram as much as we could in that report, because that report was critical for our promotions and decorations and things of that nature. So LDR was our way of taking out the vowels, and it still resembled leader.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's leader, and then it's leaders develop relationships, but it just also happens to be a play on my initials, Dennis LaRue.
There we go. Okay. So it all ties together.
It
Well,
does.
folks, this has been an unusual episode in a lot of ways. We recorded it so many months ago, but then we've got a up to the minute live update here. Dennis, glad you were able to hop on here again and give us an update. Lots of interaction in our live broadcast, and depending on which video channel you're watching a replay on, you may see, Facebook and LinkedIn have some different aspects. So be sure that you get those show notes, confidencecultivators.com. We've got Dennis's website going on the crawl again, enrichedleaders.com. Enriched Leaders is all one word. Be sure and check that out. And I would say follow him on LinkedIn, which, we've already talked about how to get connected with him. Follow him on LinkedIn for the newsletter. Steel toes. How does it says? I don't have it.
Hashtag steel toes required.
Steel toes required. Hashtag steel toes required, because it will almost certainly eventually become a book. Got several customers already in the chat there. So
I'm up to 5.
Very good. Once again, Dennis, thank you so much for coming on here. I've gotten to know you a whole lot better in the subsequent months, and I'm looking forward to more conversations. So thanks for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Don. And everybody out there, thank you for watching. I appreciate you.
Sure. So hang out in the green room for just a second, and I'll give you a proper thanks. But for now, folks, I'm not 100% sure who will be on next week. I know we're going to have somebody next week because I've got several good interviews lined up, already recorded. We want to get those folks on here. Be sure to follow the show notes, confidencecultivators.com. I was forgetting it for myself there for just a minute. And this is why we keep doing this show. We get to have great conversations with people I otherwise wouldn't get to talk with. And it's all in service of helping you as you look at your own life and figure out how to live your values so you can value your life. We'll see you next time on The Alignment Show. That's it for this week's episode of The Alignment Show. What has it inspired you to do in your own life? Whatever it is, take action now and take the first step. It will help you to talk with a friend about what you're thinking. Share confidencecultivators.com to spread the goodness. And remember to live your values and value your life. We will see you next week on The Alignment Show.